Since exploding onto the scene, the Foo Fighters have found themselves everywhere. The Grammy Awards, Wembley Stadium, headlining festivals with their music played pretty much all over the world. They've done it all. So what better way to celebrate than with an over 90-minute blood and guts over-the-top horror film? Excessive? Maybe. But that's rock and roll, and in the case of Studio 666, it's not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A, greats in B, movies, and a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. I hope you got your rock horns up and ready to go, because we are going down Horror Road and Rock and Roll Lane, and they intersect at Studio 666. And here to join us to go down this road, first of all, my lovely wife, Carrie's here. Carrie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Can't wait to talk about this movie.
And making his debut on the show, Chad LaMassa is here. Chad, welcome to the show for the first time. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Jason?
I am doing really, really good. Now, to our listeners who went back and listened to the Spawn episode, well, that was Chad's brilliant idea. Loved it. Enjoyed going down that road. But now he's pitched this, and he's here to join in as well. So, Chad, first of all, what is it about Studio 666 that made you want to jump in and enter the fray on this one?
So, I'm just a huge Foo Fighters fan, and I love horror comedies. I put this right up there with Army of Darkness. It's just a lot of fun. It looks like the guys had a ton of fun making it. You know, it's just silly and fun.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I remember going to see this in the theaters when it came out. And it came out at a really, really weird time. You know, beginning of 2022, theaters were just starting to open up. So obviously that affected a lot of different things. But Carrie, when we went to go see this, how much fun was it to see this in the theater?
Well, I was surprised how empty the theater was. I mean, this is a Foo Fighters presented project. Like, exactly. How could it not have been? And it was, in 22. So, but the theater was empty. Like, it was empty.
Ours was too.
It was crazy. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I remember going to the theater in early 2022. Like, even when we went to go see The Batman, it wasn't really jam-packed. Now, admittedly, we went to see The Late Show because we don't like people. So it's just one of those things where, well, when you want to have your own row, you get The Late Show. But Chad, like you mentioned as well, that your theater was empty as well. Does it surprise you at all that at that time, like was it just Studio 666 for you, or were other theaters or other movies getting the empty theater treatment at that time?
So that came out around my birthday. So my son got me tickets, and my wife and my son and I went. And I think there were maybe 5 other people in the theater when we saw it. So I was flabbergasted that there weren't that many people in there. But I think we saw The Batman as well, and that one was a fuller theater. But I think we went at a different, like maybe later in the day.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with an R rating, and we're going to get to all the details on this, it's going to affect the number of people that can go. But yeah, 2022, movies that came out around that time are definitely going to have an asterisk when it comes to the record books and the history books and all that when it comes to how their box office is. But before we get into the meat of it all, it's time to take Studio 666 and trailerize it.
This week on VH1's Behind the Music, the sordid story of a band who turned a house into a studio and a band into a solo project. Watch the level of lead singer syndrome get turned to 11 as he succumbs to the darkness of a forbidden riff, forgets that L is not even a note, and worst of all, chars the crap out of his hamburgers and thinks anyone wants to eat that. I mean, come on. Even freaking Madam Web knew you don't kill the burgers on the grill. Madam freaking Web. Dave Grohl is beyond fighting Foo. Now he fights demons, doom metal, and decaying rodents in a film that will have you wonder if this is the next evolution of music videos. And if so, no wonder MTV is DOA. If the sacrifice feeds the book, then the collective agony of theater goers around the world are serving a Funkin' Wagnalls level buffet. The Foo Fighters star in Studio 666. Rated R for Rocket Raccoon's corpse.
Oh, no.
I was wondering what you were going to do for the rating.
You had to go there.
I mean, okay, first things first, dear listeners. There are going to be a ton of spoilers in this. So if you have not seen this movie, go watch it now before you come back and listen to the rest of the episode, because it's been out 2 years now. We're going to talk about it. We've waited long enough. The film stars, of course, the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, Taylor Hawkins, Nate Mendel, Pat Smear, Chris Shiflett, and Rami Jaffe, as well as Whitney Cummings, Will Forte, Jeff Gollin, Leslie Grossman, and Jenna Ortega. The film is directed by B.J. McDonald. This is actually only his second film ever. Previously to this, he did direct Hatchet 3, but he's also done music videos for Slayer and Steve Vai. For the record, Steve Vai is the stunt guitarist for this film. There's a scene where Dave Grohl is like completely shredding away, and then when they cut to close-ups of his hands, those are actually Steve Vai's hands. And when I say stunt guitarist, yes, that's his credit in this movie, but it's also the credit that he got given to him by Frank Zappa when Steve Vai was recording with him. So, a little bit of, musical trivia for that. Of course, this film was filmed during the pandemic in secret. So no one knew that this was coming until they actually announced it, which is kind of cool. There were some accolades for this. At the 2023 Austin Film Critics Association Awards, Jenna Ortega won for Breakthrough Artist of the Year for this. Oh, yeah. Also for the Fallout Screaming X. I'm sure it wasn't just this. She had a bit of work during that year. And at the 2022 MTV VMAs, the Foo Fighters were nominated for Best Long Form Video. They lost to Taylor Swift for All Too Well, which you're pretty much going to lose to Taylor Swift no matter what she does, because it's Taylor Swift. At the box office, this film domestically only made $2.5 million and worldwide only $3 million. But we talked about this a little bit before the trailerized, in that it came out as theaters were still opening up. So there was a lot to take in for that. But that being said, when it did debut, it only debuted at number 8 with 1.5 million domestically. The number one film that week was Uncharted in its second week, making 23 million. Studio 666 actually was the highest grossing film. Cyrano also debuted with 1.3 million, but only in 797 theaters. Cyrano actually almost tripled the per theater average that Studio 666 did. So not great numbers, but it's 2022, so we'll let it slide.
Hey, Pantheon listeners. Christian Swain here, taking a break from listening to a little Shout It Out Loudcast episode. Love Tom and Zeus talking all things Kiss. Of course, I was listening to them on my new Raycon wireless earbuds. They have quickly become my go-to earbuds because of the comfort. These soft tips are the best I've ever used. And at this price, plus a Pantheon discount, Raycon is really hitting on all marks. Sound quality is great too. I really love having these 3 EQ options because I like more bass in the music, but less in my podcast. 8 hours of playtime for the battery is great as well. Surround sound, noise isolating, and awareness mode are all included. These are great earbuds. Go to buyraycon.com/Pantheon today to get 20% off your Raycom order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/Pantheon. Buyraycon.com/Pantheon. Hey, Pantheon listeners, Christian Swain here. Another day, another podcast I'm working on. This time, it's Famous and Gravy with Amit and Michael. I want to let you know that I loved the Factor Meals package so much that I re-upped for myself, and then I sent a package to my in-laws. Like I was with my first shipment from Factor Meals, the in-laws were as excited to try one of the prepared restaurant quality meals. Well, they got the shipment to Protein Plus meal plan and were very impressed. See, being in their 80s, anything to make the meal prep easy is a plus for them. They heated the oven per instructions and minutes later were enjoying a very delicious, nutritious, and dietitian-approved meal. One big win for me. But what really floored them was the taste. Like I told you, it's surprising how good these meals taste. Restaurant quality indeed. And like my own shipment, it really was everything Factor Meals said it would be for some seniors. No prep, no mess meals. Factor Meals are 100% ready to heat and eat. Take it from me and my in-laws. Head to factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to get 50% off. That's factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to get 50% off. Thank you, Factor Meals.
But the reason why we are here, and not just because Chad is awesome and came on the show and decided, hey, we should do this film, are the critics. Over at Metacritic, this film had a Metascore of 50, and over at Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score, unsurprisingly, is nice and high at 80%. The tomatometer sits at 56%. So, Chad, you brought this to the table here. 56%. Are you surprised by this, or does that sound about right from a critic standpoint?
From a critic standpoint, it sounds right, because they're not going to like this kind of movie. It's just, they're critics. It's not an Oscar bait movie. They're not going to give it a high score.
Now, Carrie, obviously we went through the Foo Fighters discography. We all like the Foo. Chad's wearing a Foo Fighters t-shirt, but listeners, you can't see it because it's an audio-only podcast. 80%, Carrie, I'm going to go to you first. Is this lower than you expected, or do you think that sits about right as well?
At the 80%
for the audience
viewer?
Score. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's on par. I mean, maybe it's a bit low, actually, because, and again, even the attendance in the movie theaters, I think, is a bit low, because Foo Fighters has like an army of fans, like worldwide. I mean, they filled Wembley Stadium, for goodness sake. Mm-hmm. Why the numbers are not higher, I don't understand. Maybe it's because of the R rating. I don't know, maybe an age thing that maybe like the younger generation couldn't actually get into the theater to see it. But I think if you love the band and you appreciate Dave Grohl and his obvious humor and almost like, I don't know, I don't want to say self-deprecating humor, but like he's able to laugh at himself and have a good time.
I don't think that qualifies as self-deprecating.
You know what I mean? Like, if you just take it for what it is, I think the number should have been higher, because I think that's exactly what they were doing during the time of the pandemic, where everything was super serious and obviously a very scary time in our lives. Here's the Foo creating something that's fun. And I think that, that speaks volumes, right? It's exactly, I think, what the Foo Fighters fans needed at the time, and they brought it. And oh boy, did they bring it. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think the numbers could have been higher.
Chad, I'm gonna ask you this one before we get into the meat of it. Of course, this film features the late Taylor Hawkins, and he is still missed by all Foo Fighters fans around the world, especially in this basement as we're talking right now. But Chad, do you think this film gets a second life because of remembering Taylor Hawkins and being able to see him having fun on screen?
I hadn't really thought about that, but that's probably a good, I think it probably does. And now with it being on streaming, you can get to it and watch Taylor having fun again. And yeah, that is a good point.
All right. So let's get into the breakdown of this film. And we're going to do the secondary cast first, because we're going to save the Foo for last. But we're going to start with Whitney Cummings, who played Samantha, the next door neighbor to the house that the Foo Fighters had rented out in this film. Chad, we're going to start with you. How was Whitney Cummings for you in this?
I've always been a fan of her stuff. I used to watch Undateable and her own show, and I think she wrote Two Broke Girls, which I enjoyed when it was on. I thought she did a great job in this. She was a lot of fun, and her and the chemistry with her and Rami was fantastic. I thought she did a great job.
Carrie, over to you, Whitney Cummings.
I think she was great as the, I dare I say, annoying neighbor. She played her part very well. I couldn't picture any other actress in that role. I don't know, maybe like a Fran Drescher or something. I don't know, no.
I could picture a young Fran Drescher in that role. Like, if we're talking like 90s era Fran Drescher, I think she'd be a perfect fit for that, because, I mean, let's be honest, and Chad, you called this out right from the start. This is a horror comedy. It is not to be taken seriously. Everyone looks like they're having a ton of fun with this. So Whitney Cummings as the, hippy dippy groupie neighbor / harbinger of doom, which apparently you can have both in the same character, and that's perfectly fine. You're right. Like, between her and Rami Jaffe, it looked like they were having a ton of fun. And I don't know if Whitney Cummings, is friends with the band personally outside of this film, but it kind of feels that way. And it kind of feels like the kind of film where the Foos just kind of got their friends together and said, hey, let's do something really, really stupid and have a good giggle while we're doing it.
Right.
Will Forte, who played Darren Sandelbaum, the food delivery guy. Gary, I'm going to go to you because, of course, we've talked about Will Forte on this show before when we talked about Strays. How was Will Forte in this for you once you realized exactly who it was who was playing the role?
Well, I thank you, Jay, for connecting the dots, because I literally, upon the rewatch, was like trying to picture him with short hair, and I'm like, or without the long wig. And I'm like, I've seen him before. Where have I seen him before? And without hitting IMDb, Jay was like, come on, Strays. I'm like, oh, all right. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Come on, fat shit. Come on.
And yet hearing that, it's like, it became less tragic, his untimely demise. No, you know what? It really puts perspective on the extra ranch dressing. You never want to forget the extra.
You never have enough. You never have enough ranch dressing. Chad, Will Forte.
Again, I got to warn you, I'm not going to have a whole lot bad to say about this movie. I just loved it so much. He's fantastic. He's just, again, he's another guy, SNL and Last Man on Earth. And, I really enjoy him and everything he's done. And he plays that kind of mild-mannered, like, he wants to get his band out there, but he's a little nervous about asking Dave to, take the demo. And I thought he did a good job, Yeah. Again, he's not taking it too seriously.
Exactly. Oh, the part where he was like giving himself the psych talk. He was psyching himself up. That was so funny. It was so funny. It was perfect.
Carrie, I'm going to throw this back to you before we move on. Will Forte suffers a worse fate in which film? This or Strays?
Ooh, great question. No, you know what? This one, I feel more for him in this movie because he really didn't do anything wrong. I mean, he even brought the extra ranch this time, and still it wasn't enough to save him. So that's sad.
See, I'm going to argue that he suffers a worse fate in Strays. He deserved it in Strays, let's be honest. But at least in this film, he had the fortune of dying quickly, where Strays, he's going to survive after it being mangled by the dog. And By the way, if you haven't listened to our Strays episode, dear listeners, go ahead and listen to that one.
That's okay.
Yeah, there are a ton of dog barks in that episode because we ran out of beeps, because that's the kind of movie that was. Jeff Garlin, who played Jeremy Schill, the band's manager. Carrie, over to you. How was he for you?
He was great. He was, I mean, you know what? That the beginning scene, you kind of have to wonder, like, where, like, right off the cuff, the first watch, it's like, where is this going? Because that's a whole side of Dave Grohl that I never expected to see, like, where he's just all riled up, and I'm like, it's intriguing. But yeah, how fun is that? Like, even like the camaraderie of the Foo Fighters at the end, that big high five. It's like, okay, this is
Pearl Jam high five.
This is going to be great.
Chat, how was Jeff Garlin as Jeremy Schill, the band's manager?
I mean, he was all right. I don't think he really brought anything to the character that anybody else couldn't have brought. You know, I don't know that it had to be Jeff Garlin. You know, but again, he wasn't bad. He just wasn't like a standout to me.
You have to think that as they're writing some of these characters, I mean, Samantha, the neighbor, okay, that's kind of that character. Will Forte's Darren Sandalbaum, the delivery guy who happens to be the singer of a band. You can see kind of the stereotype that they're going for. You have to think that Jeremy Schill is kind of written like what would happen if Doc McGee had a Red Bull and cocaine party. And that's kind of what this would end up, you know, obviously Doc McGee being Kiss's manager, like this would be what would happen if he got into Jimmy Page's stash. I don't know. But still, regardless of, like, a little on the loud side. And I do appreciate that it is a horror comedy. And I do appreciate that it doesn't take itself seriously. So in some cases, the overtopness works. Jeff Garlin was definitely over the top in this role. But Chad, I'm going to throw it to you. Do you think it was too much? Or did he hit the right tonality for the camp that they were going for?
I think he hit it fine. I don't know. Like, with him, I don't know how to say it correctly. Like, I just don't think he did anything special. Like, it could have been any number of actors playing that role. You know, I didn't need it to be him, if that makes sense. Oh, it makes total sense. Just one of those things where, you know, it's basically the performance of the words on the paper, and that's about it. No, you know, nothing beyond that. And I can see that too. And we're probably going to get the same thing with Leslie Grossman, who played Barb Weems, the assistant / real estate agent that showed them the house and then eventually showed up for the end kill scenes here. But Carrie, Barb Weems, as played by Leslie Grossman, smaller role, but how was she? I thought she was great. I thought I just love when she showed up in the cape, and I'm like, oh, yes. Chad, how was she? I agree with Carrie on that. She was fine. I mean, she did a good job in a very small role. And,
yeah, I mean,
but she sets everything up, so she does a great job doing that.
Obviously, there's a backstory in there that I'm glad they didn't really go into the backstory. It just became like, oh, we've been waiting for this band for a while. So clearly this is how they get rid of some bands when they get to that point. And yeah, she had a little bit of fun when she's showing the house and all that. And, you know, the this place is to die for and all that kind of stuff. Like, you get the sense that this is, you know, clearly setting things up for the way it's supposed to be. Barb Weems sets the stage, and that's completely fine. Not much of a speaking role here, but definitely a namer in Jenna Ortega, who played Sky Willow, one of the deceased band members of Dream Widow. So, Carrie, when you realize that this is Jenna Ortega, who went on to go play Wednesday in the Netflix series and now is going to be in Beetlejuice, you'll notice I said it twice, not 3 times. We're not playing with fire on this one. Jenna Ortega for you. I thought she was great. I mean, the minute that I saw her on screen, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a dark comedy, and I love it. I'm here for it. Chad, Jenna Ortega.
Honestly, I didn't even realize it was her until we rewatched it yesterday, and my son was like, hey, that's Jenna Ortega. I was like, oh my God, it is. You're right. And yeah, I mean, in the small role that she had, I thought she did a good job.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if she gets that role now, she's clearly the final girl, but it's early enough in her career that we can kill her off early in the, like, before the opening credits. But I think she fit the role perfectly for like a 1990s era kind of gothy heavy band. That would be the look that you're expecting for. And I think Jen Ortega, I mean, she barely speaks in the role. I think she spoke while she was being killed, but then she didn't speak after, you know, in the end when she pops up. So I think that adds a bit of the mystique to it, a bit of the demonic side of things. So I kind of like that.
Well, there was a lot of screaming.
Well, there was definitely screaming.
And pleading for her life, but, you know.
Well, that's when she's alive. When she's dead, she doesn't say a damn thing.
Well.
That's true.
Marty Matulis, who played the caretaker. Again, one of those smaller roles, but this one has a bit more to it, at least as far as the mood of the film. So, Chad, Marty Matulis.
He was great. He's just kind of a lumbering guy, you know, like could be Kane Hodder or who's the guy that played Michael Myers is The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of plodding along and just kind of being very eerie without having to say a whole lot, you know, and just being super creepy.
Old creepy guy in the woods with hedge cutters. You know, nothing's good is ever going to come from that. Carrie.
Exactly.
The caretaker for you.
Ooh, he played it well. He just had that, like, you just see him and you're like, okay, something's going down. He had those crazy eyes. It was great.
All right, we got a few cameos to toss in here. We're going to start with Carrie King from Slayer playing Krug, the drum tech. Carrie, I know you've been getting ready for this one. Carrie King for you.
Big fan. Oh my God. I love that he was involved in this project. I just absolutely love it. And yeah, I mean, do you think the tie-in though was because of his was it record producer that he worked with that worked with Slayer? Yeah,
so the director, BJ McDonnell, had done a number of music videos for Slayer. So I'm sure it's probably one of those things where he called him up and said, hey, by the way, I'm doing this film with the Foo Fighters. You want to be in it? And I'm sure Carrie King wasn't doing much at the time because really, like, you know, now we're Slayer is starting to kind of get back together. The talks are about them getting back on the road. But at the time, if I remember correctly, Slayer was done.
It was before their 2-year retirement tour.
Yeah, that on the 7th or 8th leg of it. Like they were getting close to Kiss territory here. But he did look like he was having a ton of fun. Chad, how was Carrie King?
Oh, he was great. I don't follow Slayer so much, so like I knew the name and I knew that he was in that band. So, but I had I'd never seen him in videos or anything, so I didn't know what to expect from him. But I thought he was really fun in this movie.
I think
a great job.
It works well because Carrie King has a very identifiable look. You know, there were a few musicians that you could put in there and sit there and have a good chuckle. Like Scott Ian would have been a perfect person to fit into that role. Right. Or even if you wanted to go with a non-musician, you know, throw Danny Trejo in there and probably be kind of funny, right? But the thing is, Carrie King looked like he was having a ton of fun with it. And the one-liners that he gets to drop are just like some of the funniest lines in this film. Who knew Slayer could be funny?
Right.
I can't believe I'm saying this about a film that has the guitarist from Slayer and the Foo Fighters in it. Lionel Richie making a small appearance in this. Chad, obviously the scene is, you know, Dave Grohl's in the middle of writer's block and he's sitting there by Rami's keyboard and playing Hello. And then Lionel Richie scolds him for trying to steal a song. Lionel, like, did you laugh out loud the minute he comes in? That's my song. Love that song.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I was just howling in laughter yesterday watching that scene. It's so great. He's just, for him to be like an angry guy, like, because you just always assume he's just kind of mild-mannered and, you know, just for him to get that fired up at Dave was just so funny.
I think that's the thing. It's Lionel freaking Richie, right? You don't expect Lionel Richie to be sitting there and like pointing fingers and telling Dave to, you know, get off his song. It's you think about some of the musician cameos, and the first one that always comes to mind is Seal when he shows up in Pop Stars Never Stop Never Stopping and gets attacked by a tiger. You know, like Lionel Richie's just having fun with this. But Carrie, how was it for you?
Well, I think that's the best part. And it really shows, again, like it solidifies like that Dave Grohl called in a lot of his friends and made it like I could even picture the call. He's probably picking up the phone and being, I had this crazy idea. We're making a movie and it's like a comedy horror film. Can you show up and just come and yell at me? Like you could just picture the phone call, and I'm sure Lionel Richie's like, yeah, for sure. Like it was, you know what? It's brilliantly funny. And I think the fact that, again, these are the characters that you don't expect to come out and play, and they do, and they bring it.
I'm sure he got paid in charred hamburgers.
Oh, which I think is funny enough, because you hear, Dave Grohl does all this goodwill work where he's like cooking for the masses. And I even heard where, when he first started to make money, Dave Grohl was like, that's great. All I want is a bigger grill, so he is like quite known for, his love for cooking. And I think the fact that he charred the hamburgers, just that one scene where I'm like, oh my God, he's cooking it to a crisp. And I'm like, oh, that's the funny part of it. Like, that's the humor.
For the record, if I ever cooked Carrie's steak to that level of char, I would not be sleeping in the house that night. I think I might get my ass kicked out the door. Because Carrie likes her steak about as bloody as Dave Grohl eats it in this film.
Okay, it's so juicy.
So chewy. Now, if you know, you know, and if you don't, it's time for you to find out. There is a scene where the band is actually recording the tracks in this, and there's a gray-haired guy with a ponytail as the studio engineer. That man is legendary horror film director John Carpenter, who also recorded and wrote the opening music for this film. Freaking love John Carpenter. I love that he shows up in this. But Chad, were you surprised to see freaking John Carpenter in this?
Yeah, especially since you just told me that was him. I didn't even realize it was him. So yeah, he was great. He did a good job.
Like, I love the fact that, yes, he wrote the intro music, and the fact that he's in this, like, John Carpenter seems to me like one of those guys that you just want to hang out with. Like, I could see him showing up on a lot of people's, 5 people at dinner list kind of thing. Carrie, for you, realizing just exactly how big a name he is, and the fact that he just shows up to be a studio engineer for a quick little scene, how cool is it that you get John Carpenter in your horror film?
I tend to wonder, though, like how much of this was like predetermined, like Dave Grohl calling him up and being like, okay, I want a song. And oh, by the way, you want to like sit in and be the record engineer. Like, I mean, again, you can just picture that Dave made all these calls and said, hey, I've got this crazy idea. Like, what are you doing this Saturday? And even with Steve Vai, I think I actually read that it was literally based on like a phone call, and he's like, hey, you want, look, I'm working on this. You want to help out? And he was like, sure, I'll show up, But again, that's just testament to, like, I've never met him, but I can just imagine that Dave is like just one of those really likable guys that, he asks and a team of people will show up and help out.
I mean, we're talking about John Carpenter here, and when it comes to horror films, there's some. Let me list a few here, just so you get the idea of the weight we're talking about. Halloween, the good Halloweens, The Thing, Christine, Escape from New York, and the only man who could make a good Rowdy Roddy Piper film, They Live. I mean, freaking They Live is such a cult classic film. He made Rowdy Roddy Piper a good actor. Freaking love it. Think it's great. But yeah, the fact that they have him in the horror film, no less, like, kudos to him for being in there, and kudos to the Foo Fighters for getting him in there. But now it's time to talk about the Foo Fighters in this. So Chad, as a Foo fan, who stands out to you amongst the six as the best actor of the group?
Oh, Dave. Because he's had some experience doing some movies in the past anyway. Pick a Destiny, and I'm trying to think. I know he's been in a couple other things here and there, but was he in Little Nicky?
No, I don't think he was in Little Nicky.
No, he wasn't.
No, but Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny, definitely.
Yeah, but so he's by far the best of the band.
Carrie, I'm going to toss it to you. Who's the best actor in the Foo Fighters?
You know what I loved is how Chris just kind of stormed out and that nobody decided to like wonder where he went. Like
Right.
I think that was what bothered me the most, is that there was really no moment, or at least maybe I didn't notice, where they like found him. I don't know. Did they just not barbecue anymore? Or
See, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, to me, Nate and Pat were the better actors. I mean,
Pat.
Dave Grohl,
So
you
good.
kind of expected, because that's kind of been the persona that you saw throughout all like the Foo Fighters videos. And that's the thing. You look at some of those earlier Foo Fighters videos, like for Big Me and stuff like that. Like you have them having a ton of fun. Learning to Fly, such a hilarious freaking video.
Great video.
Foo Fighters have basically made a career off of having a ton of fun and not giving a damn what anyone thinks. And this kind of feels like the 90+ minute extension of that. But it's nice to see like Nate and Pat and Chris and Rami, like all get their moment to shine from an acting level. And it's fun. It's a ton of fun. Rami, can we talk about Rami Jaffe for a second here?
Please.
Like he was having way too much fun for this. First impressions, Rami Jaffe as an actor for you.
Yeah, he was so funny. It just him and Whitney Cummings, with the looks they were giving each other and just the chemistry they had. I just thought it was so great. I think he did a really good job in this movie.
Gary, Rami Jaffe.
He was, you know what? He was so much fun. Like, and I tend to wonder, like, is that his personality, or is that like an alter ego? Like the whole like meditation beads and like feeling the energy in the room. Like he was, I was totally here for it. He was having so much fun with the role.
And that's the other thing too. Like you have to wonder how much of this is just them playing a character and how much of this is just like, okay, we're going to goof around and have fun. Taylor Hawkins apparently had said that he refused to learn his lines, so he was just winging it on the fly during the filming, which just goes to show, how much fun Taylor Hawkins is. For the record, by the way, if you think about, if your kids are Foo Fighters fans and you're worried about what they're going to watch in this, there are a ton of F-bombs in this film that apparently, according to IMDb, there are 1.5 F-bombs per minute in this film.
Wow.
Really?
Yep.
Do you know what's funny about it? On the rewatch, I'm like, it wasn't the language that got me, but the absolute ridiculous, like, cause of death.
Right.
for each of the characters. Like, I mean, the fact that it was so over the top, I think made it watchable. Like, sure, it was restricted, and I get for the intense amount of use of ketchup, but it was so ridiculously funny that I don't think it was scary at all.
Yeah, and that's the quick thing. By the way, officially that is 1.53 Fs per minute, 162 times. That's and its derivatives according to IMDb.com. So I love the fact that it has derivatives. That's the fun thing. But I mean, with horror films, one of the biggest things is about, and Carrie, you mentioned it, the creativity of the kills. That's when we did the episode on Jason X, of course, with our good friends, the Slasher siblings. That was one of the things where it's like, who had the best kill? So, Carrie, I'm going to start with you. Who had the best death in this film?
Ooh. Well, I mean, not that I loved seeing Carrie King's demise, but just the fact that a sound tech was completely fried plugging in, like it was, that set the scene. That set the scene for it. But I'm definitely going to say one of the hardest, actually there were two. It was not as difficult the first watch, but to rewatch and see Taylor Hawkins' scene.
I can see that.
But I think that was just kind of more because it's like, it's been 2 years and it was like, even though he was having fun and it's all good, right? And obviously like he was totally with this project, it was still like, as a fan, that kind of humbling moment of, ooh, that makes it hard to watch. But his scene, I mean, the symbol, like, and the fact that you can just imagine that the top of his face would be still present, like sitting there on the tambourine.
He got the Peggy
Or the
Carter
symbol.
treatment in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. That's for sure.
Yeah, but it was also difficult seeing. Was it who was backed over? Was that Pat?
That was Pat. Yeah,
Pat was backed over. That was hard. But Pat's facial expressions during the movie, like you had asked me who was the best actor, and you're absolutely right that it wasn't even spoken lines. It was just the fact that like he's sleeping on the kitchen counter and the whole like L sharp and just his face. He can win the room and win the show just by being. He doesn't even have to say anything. So
see, now whenever I mess up a note live, I'm just gonna say no. I'm playing it in L sharp. You're just all off. Chad, who had the best death in Studio 666?
I think my favorite is Rami and Samantha with the chainsaw as Jackal is playing. It sliced them both straight in half. That made me laugh.
I love the fact that they used Jackal's The Lumberjack song, which, yes, any song that has a chainsaw solo needs to happen. And the fact that they actually made full body molds of both of them for this scene and then had like, the air pressure guns squirting the blood all over the place. So they went to some lengths for that scene, but I think you're right. That, to me, probably the best death scene in the film. And that's coming from someone who's seen a few horror films. Let's talk about the music in this, specifically the riff, the 30-minute epic song that they were supposedly writing this. By the by, if you haven't seen this film, the house that they're in apparently is the same house that they recorded Medicine at Midnight in. So
I didn't know that.
Sort of pseudo documentary, maybe. I don't know. I'm now curious how the medicine.
I hope not.
Right? So listening to this, and that's the thing too, knowing the Foo Fighters and the music that they put out, minus the Disco Bee Gees, DGs cover album that they had, hearing this music coming out of them, was it weird, or were you like, I kind of want to hear this?
Combination of both. I did kind of want to hear it. I know there's a soundtrack album with that song or whatever. I haven't bought it, but yeah, I do kind of want to hear more of that. But it is very surprising knowing them so well.
Yeah, they did actually release the Dream Widow album. Dave Grohl was on it. Rami Jaffe actually did some work on it. The rest of the Foo Fighters, no, but it is still Dave Grohl playing on it. Carrie, the Dream Widow CD music that they were doing in this, after a while, was it getting on your nerves, or were you like, no, I kind of want to hear this riff. I wanted them to get to the end.
I don't know. I think anything for 30 minutes, whether it be like a Dream Theater song or a Dream Widow song, that's way too long for any musical endeavor. Like, it's just like, okay, move on. You know what? It's so funny because I actually remember a conversation where I was like trying to get a coworker to listen to the Dream Widow album and being like, it's Dave Grohl. Like it's Dave Grohl, but it's really heavy. It's a completely different sound that you would expect from him. So, yeah, I think 30 minutes is too long for anything, but it made the scene. My goodness, did it make the scene? Like the look on the rest of the band's face, where Dave is just going on and on and on. Like, what would have been funnier is if they actually had like a little subtitle that said 5 minutes later.
Oh, they're going to
15
SpongeBob it.
minutes later.
I mean, you say 30 minutes is too long. I would like you to listen to, I can't remember which album it was, but Transatlantic did an album. The album itself is one song. It's 72 minutes long.
Nope.
I'm not listening to that either.
Which, if memory serves, Mike Portnoy is playing drums on that album. So, see, I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all. But it is a heavier sound. Like, it's almost more Mastodon-esque than you would expect out of, say, the Foo Fighters, which the first thing that came to mind as we're rewatching this, and I'm trying to wrap my head around the notes for this, Garth Brooks released an album during like, Garth Brooks was the biggest thing in country for a while, and then he put out this album, Garth Brooks in the Life and Times of Chris Gaines. So Garth Brooks basically created this fictional character. It was still Garth Brooks doing more pop and rock type stuff as opposed to country. The album absolutely tanked, even though there were a bunch of singles off of it. That's the kind of the first thing that came to mind. It's like, are they creating a fictional thing? But no, it's still the Foo Fighters, even though it's not their music. So I'm going to ask you, Chad, for anyone who has not watched Studio 666, but they like the Foo Fighters, going into this, should they have a mindset of something like Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, or should they go in expecting more of a Spinal Tap type feel?
I guess more the Spinal Tap kind of thing. I would go with the Spinal Tap, I think.
Gary, if you were going to equate this film to another pop music or rock music where, you know, art meets life meets film kind of thing, anything come to mind for you?
Oh, that's a great question. I didn't study for the exam, so I don't know that I'm prepared to answer. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of like a good example, like maybe like Run, Ronnie, Run, where it's just so ridiculously. No, maybe that's not right.
See, the first thing that comes to my mind is Spice World, where, it's the Spice Girls and it's a completely goofy script, but you know they're just kind of having fun, even though it's more, that seems to be more like a Beatles help kind of thing as opposed to this where they just don't take themselves seriously. Maybe more also along the lines of something like the skits that Steel Panther would do for their DVDs. First one that comes to mind is Live from Lexi's Mom's Garage. Like they just have a ton of fun, and that kind of has that vibe to it. Do you think this works, Chad, if it's a band not like the Foo Fighters? Because we know the Foo Fighters like to have fun. You know, Slayer does this. Does it work?
Again, not knowing much about Slayer, can't really speak to that one. But yeah, like I can't see like Radiohead doing this because they take themselves way too seriously.
Or maybe something like a Metallica.
Yeah, they don't seem like fun-loving guys.
Lars would never allow it.
Yeah, Lars just doesn't want to have fun. Like after watching, Some Kind of Monster, like I could not possibly see them do this movie. Yeah, I don't think it would work.
Maybe Robert Trujillo.
Maybe him.
I could see
him in it, maybe.
Carrie, to you, is there any other band today that you could see pulling something off like this?
I want to see Anthrax do something of the like. I mean, they were in Married with Children, but they were very much like
that's right.
kind of themselves. Like, I think the concept of, and I'm trying to find a good example where the band as a band is trying to be a completely different band. Like, because that's essentially what you get with this movie, but they're just having fun and they're so themselves and yet like so the absolute opposite of what you would expect from them as a band. I don't know.
Chad, is there any other band that you could see pulling this thing off?
I don't know. I think maybe the Beastie Boys could have done it.
Oh, that would have been a perfect call.
Yeah. I think they could have done it.
Yeah, it kind of feels a little bit like, and our good friend Brian Colburn over at My Weekly Mixtape will probably appreciate this reference. That thing you do when the Wonders appear in a film as Captain Geach in the Shrimp Shack Shooters. I had to say that slowly because I knew I was going to mess that up if I didn't. But you had those moments where bands would show up in movies as themselves, very similar to something like the Jeff Healey Band in Roadhouse. Like there is a long history of bands appearing in films, but I think between this and maybe Spice World, they're almost unto themselves. Like I could see a group that has a ton of fun maybe pull off a horror film. Like I don't know if the Spice Girls would, but there's not many bands out there, maybe Anthrax aside, that could pull off a horror film and have as much fun with it as the Foo Fighters did, and then at least make some money. Like I could not find a budget at all for anything on this on the internet, but you have to think that the studio probably paid for it, because if you can do it, why not, right? But it was a good tonic, and that's the other thing too. You think about some of those films that came out in 2022. The Batman, yes, great film, all good, maybe about an hour too long, but that's my ass complaining still from 2 years ago. It still hasn't recovered. Also around that time, there was the Sandra Bullock and Brad Pitt film that the name is completely escaping me right now. The Lost City. Like that was a good tonic as well. So to have movies like this that really didn't take itself seriously to get people back in the theaters, do you think Studio 666 was the right movie at the right time, Chad, to get people back into the theaters? Or was it something that they probably should have held on to for a little bit longer until the theaters really ramped back up?
Yeah, I think they probably should have waited a little bit, because horror is a tough set. Like, not everybody's into horror movies, so to get them to come back, like, in the initial wave of people coming back, I think you need the big tent poles like the Batman or, kind of superheroes or whatever, big name stars. I don't think this was necessarily the one that was going to bring people back to the theaters.
Yeah, no, that was going to be Morbius, obviously.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Gary?
Not to market this, but I think I would have loved seeing it being released as almost like Kevin Smith's spoken word tour or Q&A. And whereas like you sell tickets to the movie and then the band does like a Q&A after the fact, right?
Oh,
like,
that would have been great.
I think that, because then you're selling to the Foo Fighters fan base.
All right. One last question before we get to our MVPs. Chad, I'm going to start with you. Dream Widow Tour. Are you buying tickets?
It's really not my style of music. I mean, if Dave's out there, I'll go. But yeah, I'm not into like the super death metal type stuff. So I don't know, if somebody had an extra ticket and wanted me to go, I might go with them. But I don't know if I'd buy them.
Carrie, would you go to a Dream Widow concert?
Probably not. Probably not. It's really not my thing. But although, if the Foo, played one song just kind of as a lark during one of their shows, I think that would be funny. That would be fun.
I mean, if that's their encore on a night, that'd be hilarious. That would
my
absolutely
God.
be hilarious.
Half an hour encore.
To open the show with.
Oh God, can you imagine opening a show with a 30-minute freaking song?
Well,
I mean,
I
Mike
think
Portnoy
people
was
would
on
be
drums. Yeah, can you imagine that? People would be like, all right, Foo Fighters, and they start playing Dream Widow. It's like, we're going to be here for a bit before we get some Foo Fighters.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know if I'd go to see them alone, but you know what? If they were like one of the side stages at a festival, I might go check it out.
That sounds like an option.
Not buying a ticket for them, though, just as is.
Right.
All right, Chad. You know the drill. Who is your MVP of Studio 666?
All right. Well, you're probably expecting me to say Dave or Taylor, but I'm gonna go with Pat Smear. I just because all the stuff that Carrie was talking about earlier, he was just adorable in this movie. Like his facial expressions and like when he's sleeping on the floor with the barbecue sauce spilled and the real estate lady walks in and he was just so cute in this movie. I loved his facial expressions and his mannerisms and stuff. It was great.
All right, Carrie, who's your MVP?
Well, this is a tough one because, I mean, obviously Pat Smear was so great, but yeah. I mean, Dave played his part really well. Like
He did.
He was, I mean, again, I see him as just being like one of the nicest guys, and to see him turn into like this, I don't know, raw meat eating asshole, really, like he seemed so, he literally he played his part so well to completely reverse his own personality and make it believable. Like I would love to see the outtakes. I would love to see the outtakes or even like the lead up before they hit, action on the scene. Where like that moment where he turns, that switch that is flicked and he completely turns into a different person. I think he played it well. So I'm going to go with Dave.
I'm probably going to shock both of you in that I'm not going with a single Foo Fighter for my MVP. My MVP is Mr. Kerry King. There's something about a cameo really setting the tone and almost standing out. I mean, like Lionel Richie was funny and all. John Carpenter was kind of cool. Kerry King was freaking hilarious.
He was.
Honestly, like I don't know how much they actually had written for him, but he came in and he just stole the scenes that he was in. So for me, Kerry King is my MVP. Although I will give both Pat Smear and Nate Mendel total props for their acting in this. I think they actually did a very good job throughout the whole film. But it's freaking Kerry King. It's freaking Kerry King. Chad, thank you so much for bringing this film to us. Before we go, please remind our listeners out there where they can find you out there on the interwebs.
Well, I don't have a podcast or anything, but my Instagram handle is BrodyQuinn8. Brody like Jason Lee and Mallrats, and Quinn as in Harley Quinn, all one word, 8. So that's the best place to get me.
I love the fact that you got Mallrats in that reference because we've covered that movie. So go back and listen to that. I feel like we now need to go listen to or watch the Birds of Prey movie and see if that one qualifies as well. I'm very curious now. All right. Chad, thank you so much. Carrie, thank you as always. And to you, our listeners, you guys know the drill. If there is a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned or is just so bad that there is no way in Studio 666 that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at Not That Badcast or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, go to our contact page so you can drop us a line and you can request an episode for us to cover. We'd love to hear from you guys. Please absolutely reach out. We're here for you as much as we're here for us. It's a two-way street. Until next time, he's Chad, she's Carrie, I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.
Hey, this is Liberty DeVito.
This is Mike Del Giudice.
This is Michael Cavanaugh from Broadway's Moving Out.
This is John Jackson, director of the Billy Joel Archive.
This is Russell Javers.
This is Richie Cannata, and you're listening to Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast. It's awesome.
I'm Michael Grosvenor.
And I'm Jack Fernino.
We're lifelong Billy Joel fans who launched a podcast in 2020 celebrating the music we love.
Whether you're looking for the greatest hits or the B-sides and rarities, you'll find it all here. And if you've ever wondered what happens behind the scenes of a concert or recording session, we've got you covered.
Join us as we explore albums, tours, band members, the latest news, and more. You'll also get a unique glimpse into the music industry straight from the musicians and other professionals who help make it all happen.
Tune into Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast at glasshousespod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast is a proud member of the Pantheon Podcasts Network.